Ben, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it, Kevin? It's a beautiful day here in Northern California where the sun's shining, it's starting to get hot out, and spring has definitely sprung.
It looks like it. That was actually the first thing I was going to say is what a beautiful backdrop. I mean, for those that are just listening and not watching this episode, I mean, you got trees in the background. I can almost guess the temperature just looking at it. Is it like like mid 70s or
I
high?
think it hit 90 today, and
Oh,
I'm
I'm
just
way
here
off.
hiding in the shade.
Okay, I'm way off then. Because I mean, in Texas, it's so humid and sticky that I would think that California climate is a bit more fresh, but everywhere's heating up, I guess, right? So who knows?
Yeah, and the coast in California is beautiful this time of year where it's starting to warm up and you have that humidity and that breeze. But we're a bit more inland up in the hills, where cannabis tends to be, grow the best, and it's definitely high, hot, and dry here.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's exactly, I mean, the perfect segue in terms of some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. I mean, you serve as the co-founder, chief science officer at Humboldt Seed Company, and Ben, your background is extensive, man. I mean, you've traveled all over. It's super impressive what you've done in terms of the genetic space, and really learning from the different experiences that you've had. So let's kind of start at the beginning. From my understanding, you grew up immersed in the cannabis industry with what is it, three generations of families that just grew and bred cannabis? Is that right?
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you consider my grandparents' complacency as active participation in it. It was more my aunts and my uncles were kind of grew up around them growing cannabis on my grandmother's property and also my grandfather's farm a little bit with their knowledge, but they weren't really super active in it. So yeah, two, three generations. It's been a wild ride. It's definitely been really interesting. I never thought I would find myself here in 2023 where legal cannabis is really sweeping the nation, and coming from back in the day when the dare program came to my school, and I would turn green in my seat just knowing what auntie and uncle were doing up in the woods behind grandma's house.
That's so funny. And I mean, I would imagine that somewhere you there was a spark in interest. I mean, this you were seeing it all around you growing up, but in terms of your niche in that of preserving ancient landrace genetics, right? So tell me a little bit about that journey that led you to that spark in interest and kind of put you on this path.
So yeah, I guess I say in a former life, but I during my college career, I just did a lot of work in geology and like paleo environmental reconstruction. So we did a lot of stable isotope analysis, recreating, what the environment was like in different places on the earth, 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and so on. And one of the projects that I worked on, was some master's level work at the University of Pittsburgh, um, under Michael Rosenmeyer. What we were doing is we were in Mongolia, and we were working alongside different archaeological teams
Mm-hmm.
that were in country, and we were collecting horse teeth. That was kind of our jam. Horse teeth, some bone fragments from humans, but mainly horse teeth. And we were looking at the oxygen O16 versus O18 ratio. So a little bit of heady science, but there's slight differences in the weight of oxygen. And through, I guess, comparing those differences, you can recreate historical kind of heat signatures. So in hotter environments, there's less O16 because it volatilizes off first, and there'll be more O18. So the ratios are different depending on if it's hotter or colder.
Okay.
And one of the digs that we were on, we were collecting some horse teeth. It was this like kind of pyramidal mound in the middle, and then around like an arch around the eastern facing side was all these smaller mounds. And in the first mound, there was a there was a young child, and there was like toys from this excavation was of the Zangyu people, roughly 3,000 years ago. Was their kind of timestamp. But so and so through kind of the population was each next burial, and in the burial, the middle burial, there was a female in her 20s, and for all like purposes, she was most likely a midwife. You couldn't really tell, but that was kind of the guess.
Okay.
And in her burial, in her grave, we found cannabis seeds. So
What?
there was actual, petrified cannabis seeds in this burial, and then throughout that
From
trip,
3,000 years ago, right? 3,000
yeah,
years ago. Wow.
yeah, roughly 3,000 years ago. And throughout that trip in Mongolia, we kind of you would come across it every once in a while, like down near like the river valleys. There would be these just kind of wild ruderalis plants growing everywhere. Sometimes there'd be actually like a fairly significant stand of like, a few thousand plants in a small area that looked like it was under cultivation, but, supposedly it wasn't. Supposedly it was just kind of this wild stand of ruderalis. So that really that work really kind of reignited my kind of my thoughts into cannabis, as far as it being something maybe more than just kind of like what my family was doing at the time, what I was enjoying personally at the time, but that there was a real history there, and that people, long before us have had a real strong connection with the plant.
That is incredible. That is amazing. I mean, to uncover something like that from so long ago, right? And then, like you said, that light bulb moment of, hold on, what we're doing here, I mean, has been done long ago, and maybe there's even more to this than what we were thinking, right? Or what we're doing. What can you explain to the audience the difference between like a ruderalis plant, like, and sativa and indica? Because I know that sativa and indica gets brought up quite a bit, but ruderalis sometimes gets left behind.
Yeah, that's a super kind of dynamite conversation. There's a lot of debate because it is one species, but there's different subspecies within cannabis, and people argue that there's even more than those three. But for all intents and purposes, there's kind of three main buckets that are the cannabis genome, and ruderalis was theoretically it's from a genetic perspective it's simpler, so it potentially could be older theoretically. So starting there, ruderalis is it's kind of like a determinate tomato. Like you plant a cannabis seed that's from the ruderalis family or has ruderalis genetics in it. It is an autoflower. It will you plant it in the ground, and 60 to 100 days later, you're going to be harvesting it no matter what. So there is it's all kind of pre-baked into the genetics when it will flower. It's not reliant on the season. It's not reliant on the day length. The days could be 24 hours or the days could be 12 hours, and it's going to go through that same growth pattern. And then you have the more sorry, good.
Sorry, just to interject. So I would imagine, like, if you're a first-time home grower, like a ruderalis plant would be kind of a good kind of first step, right? In your home grow operation, just to kind of see how it all works out, or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great first step. It's small, it's really approachable. It has its quirks, of course, like anything. Like you always want to plant your ruderalis seed. After you germinate it, you want to plant it very quickly into its forever home, because they don't like to feel confined. It's a very smart plant. As soon as it feels confined in its root zone, it'll immediately go into flower. So you can grow a ruderalis plant, as tall as me, which is, 2 meters tall, 6 feet tall, or you can grow that same ruderalis plant in a smaller pot, and it'll only get, 8 inches tall, and it'll be, an 8-inch cola sticking out of the ground, or you could have, a quarter-pound bush. Um,
And it's all dependent on the environment. Kind of like a goldfish, it sounds like the bigger the
Whoa,
environment.
totally. I never thought about that comparison. That's a really good comparison. Yeah, because
Yeah.
goldfish will get huge in a big tank.
Right. Yeah. That's crazy, man. Okay, sorry. I jumped on a little segue there. So go ahead and continue. So now you've explained the ruderalis. So now sativa and indica and maybe the differences between those species.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of move down in latitude. You usually find
Yeah.
ruderalis in like extremely northern latitudes where you have these really drastic daylight swings where it goes from 24 hours of light in the middle of summer, and then it goes down to almost no light going into winter. So the plant has adapted to not rely on that light cycle to dictate when it flowers. And then you head a little bit further south, from Siberia or Mongolia, northern Russia, into the Himalayas, and that's where you kind of get Afghanistan, Pakistan, in northern India, Nepal. You get a lot of indica
Hmm.
dominant varieties, which are wide drug leaf types. So very tend to be squatter. They tend to be kind of greener, like a darker green in appearance. It helps, and they also tend to turn more purple, which helps for the cold nights they experience. So they've adapted to to like kind of mountainous, but long warm summers, long warm dry summers.
Got you.
Um, and then the sativa plants, you keep heading south, and then you go towards the equator, and then you have the sativas, which are just beautiful, huge, light green, narrow leaf drug type plants that um, they're built differently. They're almost built on the flip side of the ruderalis, because a good sativa will veg no problem under 12 hours of light, and it will take like a small dip, and it'll all of a sudden it'll flower under 11 and a half hours of light.
Wow.
So it's like just this create this plant that's kind of traversed the globe, has really adapted well to all of its different regions.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a correlation, right? Because we have a CB1 and CB2 receptor, and we know scientifically that the minor cannabinoids in this plant, like they bind to those receptors, right? And as humans, we adapt to certain environments. We have, right, in our evolution. So there is a correlation between the two, right? Because biologically we are married to these plants. So I don't know. That's just interesting to hear you break it
Yeah,
down like that.
the oldest two known plants, like in kind of in my former life, is like doing that geology work, working with anthropologists and archaeologists. Like the oldest two seeds that are found in human settlements are flax and cannabis, and like the oldest ones are like, I mean, like 30,000 years ago we were interacting with these plants, we were collecting them, we were inadvertently influencing, putting our pressure, our selective pressures on them. Maybe we were only eating the ones with the biggest seed, and then maybe we had a to-go snack and we took it back to our village, and then it started growing around our village.
Right.
So
And
yeah, we
feeding
have
our
a lot.
horses, right? And our livestock and whatnot too. I mean, it's feed also.
Totally. Yeah. Then the next step, yeah, when animal husbandry, what better way to bring those kind of foraging animals in close to a village than surround that village by super proteinaceous seeds that are available for them.
It's amazing the way you put it that way. That makes so much sense, right? It's this plant that just kind of feeds and powers everything around it, right? And kind of even communal, brings everything together. So even like you said, to planet outside of the commune, it's bringing animals in, right? To the forefront. I mean, it's amazing. And yeah, I mean, we can have a whole discussion as to why it's been illegal for the past, 100 years, particularly in the US, but we'll save the rant and the frustration for another time, Ben. For now, I want to talk to you about that story. Okay, so Mongolia, you found those seeds. did you, I mean, did you were you able to take them? What happened with those seeds? And then did you start to, is that where you traveled elsewhere around the world to kind of just start to really learn and research the cannabis plant more?
Yeah, that was kind of like what reignited kind of my passion, especially like my interest in a whole different aspect of cannabis. Because like growing up, I always thought it was, something you grew that you didn't talk about, that you had to be very careful with. But that was, hugely rewarding and also a lot of fun. Um, and from there, work like starting Humboldt Seed Company and going down this path where we're in like on the forefront of legalization, here in California, just with Prop 215 really kind of creating access, and then with that access, being able to then kind of like slowly more openly breed cannabis, and then also talk about breeding cannabis with other folks is led us down this really interesting path of now we're have collaborative projects with the University of the West Indies in Jamaica with Dr. Michelle Emmanuel, doing a lot of research there into kind of figuring out like kind of helping define what is where are the roots of these different plants coming from, like
Hmm.
because like Jamaica had a huge influence from India early on, which brought over a lot of cannabis genetics, and then there's been this like trade within the Caribbean of cannabis genetics. So like really looking into like how these things have been moving around, and then how they've been kind of evolving and adapting when introduced into when introduced into the tropics.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like your high level skill set and extensive background has really catapulted you to where you're at today. I mean, it's been fast, right? With the Humboldt Seed Company. I mean, like you said, you kind of started in California, and then now, I mean, you've got international expansion. I mean, would you say Jamaica, and I believe Canada and Colombia are also other countries that you're operating in, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, how did you prepare for that? Talk to me a little about the differences and what you're working on in those countries.
preparation. I don't know how we prepared for it. Every day I wake up and wonder how we got here. But yeah, it's cool. In Canada, we have we did a project there where we did the first certified organic cannabis seed, feminized cannabis seed, and then we've been exporting all over the world to other licensed facilities. Which has been a huge learning curve. Exporting to Germany and France and South Africa and um, Portugal and Spain, and just kind of learning all the nuances of how each country is approaching its cannabis reform. So like how
Mm,
you know South Africa is opening up, and then will be opening up, and it's like looks like everything's moving forward really quickly, and then it kind of contracts and slows down, and all of a sudden Spain starts making some big moves. So it feels like it's kind of like starting in like fits and spurts right now on a global level. And there's some areas that are just really popping off. Like, and you mentioned like the work we do in Colombia. Like Colombia to me is like a cannabis cultural heritage site. Like some of the oldest traded cannabis varieties that I'm aware of really came out of Colombia as far as modern history in the U.S. with like Punta Roja, Santa Marta Gold, all those beautiful sativas that were being exported out of Colombia back in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. Um, it's just awesome to see their regulators kind of open it up for a global level, and then kind of realize that, hey, this is an approachable, this is safe, this feels comfortable, and then open it up for everyone, so that now everyone in Colombia, I believe, can grow like 27 plants in their home.
wow. How difficult is it to get your hands on a strain like Santa Marta Gold? I mean, I imagine in your case, you're well known, you're credible, right? But I mean, like for someone that wanted to travel to Colombia, like is it super exclusive to get a hold of those types of genetics, those rare genetics?
It definitely takes you have to. It definitely takes some looking and searching around, like kind of globally. It seems like there's been a big push for hybridizing everything with California genetics. So it's like no matter where I go, it's always sour diesel crossed with this, or OG Kush crossed with this, or some new variety from California that you've heard about crossed with some local landrace stuff. So the best thing is going to small communities, go to the old aunties and uncles that are still keeping it real, growing the same thing that they've been growing since the 1970s. That's kind of those are the folks that are really kind of being the stewards to the plant at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very important to recognize that, and then for us to as a community figure out a way to perpetuate, to keep that going, so that these varieties don't get lost, and we don't kind of bottleneck the cannabis genome into everything being a gelato cross or a runts cross, which are amazing strains, but the diversity is king.
Right. And I mean, to preserve the legacy of those genetics, right? I mean, you want to, in some ways, pay tribute to that, right? They've been around for so long. Um, if you could, if you could put a percentage as to how many strains are being crossed, I mean, what does it look like right now? Is it like 70-30? Is that like, what's the breakdown?
Um, as far as like from an international perspective,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say yeah, it's definitely 70-30. And it can't um like I said, they are there. They're kind of just like they're kind of hiding in the jungle a lot of the time. Um, but yeah, you see kind of this just movement towards, especially on the kind of the international like exchange level, where folks are growing hectares, licensed hectares of cannabis, and then exporting it to Europe or to Germany, and everyone's trying to kind of take these varieties that work really well in the tropics and then kind of force them into the box of what the pharmaceutical companies are searching for. So that's been an interesting thing to watch. Is we're taking these very diverse populations and then trying to put them in the box that can be regulated and then brought to the world.
Right. Which is sad. I mean, it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate to lose it, but I feel like really quickly a lot of regulators are realizing that we can't fit cannabis in the box, and so there's a lot of restructuring of the box as we go. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in general, it's been okay. I don't think anything's been lost or thrown away. I think there's a resurgence in interest in general for landrace genetics, and then also for just the knowledge of kind of like what are in these old strains. Like, because I know there's some crazy sativas, especially the African sativas that they may not test very high THC, but you consume a small amount of it and you're lit. You're like, you have a much stronger effect than some of like the 30% stuff that we have here in California, because there's things we don't know about still. There's compounds that we don't understand in these plants. So I think people are I feel that people are realizing that there is value there, and like in what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when you talk about those compounds, what is it like? Is it over 400 or 500 various compounds that, I mean, we only know a small fraction of them right now, and we're still learning them, right? Is that the number in the 400s to 500s?
Yeah, I've heard three to 400, and then yeah, like there's more every day that they're discovering, and then all the antagonists that go with those. So the different terpene blends, the different sulfur compounds and flavonoids that can be thrown in there just to create this concert of what's truly happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for some people that are entering the industry, it could be confusing. It could be overwhelming, this information, right? Because I mean, even you, I would imagine, as an expert, I mean, you're learning, and like you just said, we're learning about these compounds and these every day. So how does the average consumer pick quality genetics? Like what's their process?
Um, I would start by, finding something you like at, either the dispensary or wherever you get your medicine from, finding something that you resonate with, that you like. And, when in doubt, the nose kind of knows. So a smell that you're attracted to even can be a good indicator. And then it's finding just a quality seed company that's been around for a while, that has a good track record online, and has been, has plenty of information about what you're going to be purchasing, because there's nothing. I mean, you're dedicating a chunk of your time. Like, I know, like when you sell seeds, it's your interaction with the customers. It's like, can be a 4 month process that, this person is dedicating 4 months of their life to cultivating this plant. So at the end of that 4 months, it really a bit better be as advertised, or you'll hear about it.
Right, right. Yeah, and your tip about the smelling is so important. I mean, I've been told that before. Like, if you smell the flower and you like it, you like the smell, then more than likely you're gonna like the taste. You're gonna enjoy consuming it, right?
Totally, yeah. In general, it's, I mean, there's no scientific evidence behind this that I know of, but I we go by it here, and it's the nose knows. And generally, yeah, you're attracted to kind of what you resonate with, to whether it's like a piney smell, or a fruity smell, or more of like a cracked pepper nose. And we know that all those different terpene combinations do have really strong effects on your experience with the plant, with consuming the plant. So there is a lot that would suggest that, your body's kind of telling you. It's an echo chamber. If you know if you're maybe have some inflammation, or just want to like really chill out, like maybe some cracked pepper, OG kind of nose is going to be attracting to you. If you're trying to get, stimulated and get something done and be motivated, maybe you're going to start leaning towards some of these, like, kind of terpinolene, limonene based smells that are kind of a little bit more get up and go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's all good advice, and I appreciate you expanding on that thought because I've been following suit and it's been working for me. So I have a couple of forward-looking questions for you as we wrap up, and that is, what current research is being done, particularly in the genetic space, to help inform the future of the cannabis industry.
Um, right now, there's a lot going on around just kind of the basic principles, applied, like the basic applied principles of modern day breeding into cannabis, because for the past 100 years, cannabis has been very repressed and very outside of modern breeding techniques. So there's this kind of vacuum that's been created, that now we have, all of a sudden we are seeing ourselves with tools we could have never imagined 20 years ago being able to use, whether it's doing marker assisted breeding, identifying from a genetics perspective, what makes an autoflower, like why, like what genetic sequence is in there. And then once we have it identified, we can then look through a population, um, that we've hybridized, and try to find that sequence in there, so we can convert photoperiod strains very easily into autoflower strains, and then vice versa. um, so that's been a huge kind of leap. So we're seeing a lot of kind of traditionally just photoperiod, or like super long season varieties kind of being reeled into an autoflower type. We're doing a lot of just more informed breeding, as far as looking at stability levels in our populations, and knowing that if a licensed cultivator grows 10,000 of these seeds, that at the end of the season they're going to be able to put them all into the same bag, and there's going to be very little variation. The population is going to be extremely homozygous, and yeah, those are the big two kind of leaps we're seeing like this year. That, and then a lot of the like different cannabinoid and terpene research, like around, especially around the different sulfur compounds that's coming out this year, and just quantifying, which varieties of cannabis even have them, let alone what they're going to be doing. Um, and then the THCV, which has been kind of a hot topic lately for the past couple of years, or like we jokingly call it skinny weed because it doesn't cause the munchies, and it's like a very kind of alert high. It's almost like you took a, it's not like quite like taking a shot of espresso, but it's like on that plane. Like you find your words really easy. You're able to like look people in the eye. You're able to have a very normal, quote unquote, normal day, even though you've consumed cannabis.
Yeah, that's what's amazing, right? Is, I mean, going back to what we were saying, the hundreds of compounds that we're still identifying and learning every day. I mean, a compound like THCV, to your point, it's it's it helps like control your diet, right? It doesn't, it has the opposite effect than what other strains would do, where it gives you more of an appetite. It's an appetite suppressant, which is an incredible thing. I mean, the opportunities with this planet, once we can really start to separate these compounds and understand what they do, the sky's the limit. It's going to be a lock and key effect.
100%. Yeah, we see that in other, in so many other botanicals that we've been able to study for, hundreds of years, that people have been using for thousands of years. It's like these botanicals are, very commonly used in, pharmaceuticals, and then also in just like our daily lives, whether it's a supplement or just a food we consume. That cannabis is like for the first time really being able to be kind of, you know, dissected in a way that we're figuring out these different compounds and how they work together and how they work separately, and then where they fit within this kind of ecosystem that we all already live in, where we're taking supplements in the morning, or eating a power bar that has caffeine in it or something like that, can be replaced with THCV, and you're not going to get this. You're not going to become high from it. You're just going to become more alert from it.
Right, right. And I mean, this may answer my last question here, and that is, like, what most excites you about what's in store for cannabis, the potential for the industry?
I think the unknown, and then just like the depth of kind of the what cannabis is what keeps me kind of so inspired by it. Whether it's everything from bioplastics to um, there's a couple of big car manufacturers that are kind of adopting now hemp side panels, like hemp based plastic side panels, producing, more protein. Protein is always a global issue when it comes to what's in the news everywhere now is protein. So yeah, adopting cannabis seeds as a viable protein source is super exciting. Textiles, there's been in some of the excavations that we're aware of, nothing I've participated in, but they're actually excavating what they thought was silk, and it was over 5,000 years old. They thought it was silk, and in reality, it was hemp. It was a hemp based fiber that had been worked so fine that it was silk. So there's lost
Wow.
technologies out there that I'm sure in the next 10 to 20 years we're going to be able to rediscover and kind of adopt these into a more sustainable approach to living moving forward as humanity.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's just fascinating that we're relearning this, but um it really helps having open conversations, open dialogue like this with experts like yourself who are, on the front lines, and you're doing it, and you're doing the research, and you're, working with different genetics and trying to preserve the landrace genetics. And so, Ben, I really appreciate your time, man. I appreciate your insights. I learned a ton today, and I know that the audience did as well. Where can people find your website, y'all's social medias, anything that they could do to learn more about the Humboldt Seed Company, or even yourself?
Yeah, HumboldtSeedCompany.com is our website. You can learn a lot about, the history of the company, kind of a lot of the work we're doing. You can order seeds there as well, of course. And then our social media main platform is Instagram. The Instagram police are allowing us, and is at the Humboldt Seed Company. So yeah, people can check us out there. And respect, Kevin, for having me on. It's great to have a platform like yours to be able to share this kind of knowledge with folks. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. No, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. And hey, let's have you on again real soon. I know that this industry is constantly evolving and changing. And so if you come across some interesting genetics or you're working on various projects that you find interesting, I'd love to share it with the audience.
Stoked. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And thank you all for listening. Until next time. Bye.
Respect.